Hey, welcome back to Black Hat USA 2023 here in Las Vegas, day two. We're all running on fumes right now after a night of parties, but I'm excited to be sitting here with Snehal Antani. He's this Antani, I got that mostly out. CEO and co-founder of a company called Horizon3.ai. We actually got a chance to meet a little bit last night and talk about what we were going to talk about today, and hopefully we'll have a good discussion. Welcome, Snehal.
Thanks. At this point of Black Cat, I'm mostly full of bourbon and bad decisions, so see how the rest of the day goes.
Well, it might have been a bad decision to come on here, and we're going to talk about pen testing.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are you doing in the world of pen testing?
So kind of my background, I grew up on the defensive side, solutions architecture, enterprise architect, CIO, and in all of my jobs, I had no idea I was secure until the bad guys showed up. And I needed to verify my security posture and articulate we were secure to our bosses. And pen testing was super important as a way to verify, but I couldn't sit around and wait 18 weeks for somebody to show up, get a report, show how bad we are, and then disappear until next year. And so the challenge in pen testing is, how do we continuously identify our exploitable attack surface? How do we continuously pen test? How do we focus on the problems that are actually important to fix because they can lead to a compromise? And then how do I quickly fix and retest so I can know for sure that I've fixed it? And so I think that in pen testing, what's really changing is the frequency of pen testing should be equal to or greater than the frequency of your change. So for every patch Tuesday, there should be a pen test Wednesday and beyond. And so if we take that as kind of the North Star, how on earth do we get there?
Interesting. As you learned last night, I used to do pen testing. Our audience kind of knows that pen testing is a pet topic of mine. And one of my frustrations when I used to do pen testing, and I stopped doing it almost 20 years ago, was doing the every annual or every 6-month pen test and giving them a real good report, telling them what was wrong, coming back 6 months, a year later, and they hadn't done anything about it. So it's interesting that you're seeing the same problem, but from a slightly different angle. What's your take on how to fix that? How to address that?
I think you got a few things. One is what is the compelling reason to run more frequent pen tests? Let's just start there for a moment.
Well, let's start with, give us for the purposes of our conversation, what do you call a pen test?
So if you kind of keep it real simple, can a specific technical objective be achieved, like domain compromise, host compromise, or so on, that can lead to a compromise of your uptime, compromise of your information, or a compromise of your access?
So a pen test involves some sort of an objective or goal.
Right, so you have to start with what are the objectives or goals that can be achieved, and how do those objectives and goals matter from a risk standpoint for the business? And then once you understand the objectives or goals, what are what is the exhaustive list of ways an attacker could have gotten there?
Right.
And I think the important word there is exhaustive, because the other issue of pen test is, if you've got 100,000 hosts, you can only afford to test maybe a small slice of it.
Right.
And so you're going to get a real narrow slice, but think of all of the dark aspects of the infrastructure you haven't tested. So it's not just to achieve a goal once and ring the bell, it's all of the exhaustive attack paths that lead to that particular goal you're trying to achieve.
And I'm sure you've never heard, we had to patch all of them?
Yeah, that's the other thing. And the other part is, the big evolution here is attackers don't hack in with CVEs anymore. They log in with credentials that they've harvested. And your credential attack surface has grown significantly, made worse by open source intelligence, password reuse, and other techniques like that can lead to compromise in ways that most tools are not tuned to detect.
Yeah, and it's funny because when I was doing it, cracking passwords was a thing, because they were in world readable files, they were in the memory of the systems. It was back in the Unix days. So if you could get something to crash and create a core dump, it was all there. Yeah, so it was very simple to run a crack program. But I was talking to some of my pen test buddies in the last couple months, and I'm like, do you actually do password cracking anymore? And they're like, once in a long while. But yeah, there's other ways to harvest the credentials that are equally effective. And why do the one thing if something's easier for you?
Well, here's an example. So HP ILO, we were a big HP storage company when I was a in my previous jobs. HP ILO is basically this virtual appliance used to manage, hardware. Difficult to monitor because it's a custom OS. You're not installing traditional agents on it, and difficult to patch because it's just one of those components that people don't patch very regularly.
Gotcha.
So in one of our pen tests, get code execution on ILO. It stores all of its credentials in clear text in memory. So all you had to do was dump that particular process. You've got all these clear text credentials, many of which are service accounts.
Right.
And then from there, you can snowball that into adjacent machines and compromise.
Right.
And it's Dell iDRACs are the same way, HP ILOs are the same way. And attackers know this. There are blind spots in your environment. Target the blind spots. It's an easy way to get creds. And once you've got creds, you can do all sorts of things with it.
Very much the way it used to be. So it's good to know that the methodology continues. There is a way to do a pen test. There's a way to emulate the attack strategy, and the attackers are going to do what they do, right? So tell me a little bit about Horizon3.ai.
Yeah, so with Horizon 3, our roots came from our time serving within the special operations community. So I'd left Splunk as CTO, joined the special operations community, and cybersecurity was part of my portfolio amongst other things. And the challenge is I couldn't articulate our security posture accurately. And so we had red teams come in, and they showed up, punched us in the face, showed our holes. The report looked very similar to last year's report, and then they disappeared. And then after we fixed those issues, I said, hey guys, can you come back and retest to make sure we fixed them? And the firm laughed at us, like, no, there's an 18-month wait. We'll come back and see you at the end of next year. I said, well, this is silly. The key part of pen testing isn't finding the problems. It's quickly fixing and retesting to make sure that they've been remediated.
Right.
And how do we accelerate this find, fix, verify cycle? The other big leap of faith was in infrastructure pen testing. That was my biggest attack surface. That's what I was worried about. Custom applications, important, but I can mitigate that through SAST, DAST, and other types of techniques on custom code. But infrastructure is where my biggest blind spot was. And the more I looked at infrastructure pen testing, it was clearly a graph problem, which is, attackers think in graphs, defenders think in lists. So if you look at kind of the offensive side of the house, how do you do recon enumeration, organize that data into a knowledge graph, and then from there, if you know you've got well-defined goals, domain admin or so on, there are specific waypoints along the way that will increase the likelihood of achieving that goal.
Right.
So we took this leap of faith as we left the special operations community to start Horizon 3 of can we invent this idea of autonomous pen testing? So point, click, and digitally shoot, primarily focus on internal infrastructure tests, and being able to exhaustively identify ways to achieve these goals.
So the hair stood up on my neck a little bit just now because being an old-time pen tester that firmly believed that a pen test isn't a pen test unless it's manual and it's a person with a brain that's figuring out and connecting, like you're saying, the graph.
Yeah.
What's connected and where do things work and how am I getting here? It might be any circuitous route. I understand the need for automation in our modern age, but convince me that it's okay, or is there still a brain behind it, or what is it that still makes it a pen test?
So let's break that into a couple of pieces. The first is that humans are super gifted at finding logic flaws in custom applications.
Right.
Really hard to solve that with algorithms. And we're naturally gifted as humans to find that. And so humans need to be the scalpel. They need to focus on those custom applications, the really obtuse or kind of nuanced ways to compromise. But there's a whole bunch of tactics where algorithms are good enough or often superior at scale. Mastering the art of running responder, grabbing NTLM hashes, cracking those hashes and reusing them, password spraying or so on, that's not going to put you on stage at DEF CON. Like, how do you focus as a human on the things that are really pushing the bar?
Right.
Recognizing that autonomous systems can actually solve a lot of the problems. Once again, especially at scale. That's kind of number one. Number two, though, is the difference between automated and autonomous. I actually believe automated is impossible in pen testing, because think of when IBM played Kasparov in chess. IBM didn't hard code 40 million chess games. They looked at every piece on the board to determine the next best action. Trying to automate every possible permutation of a pen test is an impossible task.
Right.
There's why there's a whole graveyard of breach and attack simulation companies that tried to automate and hard code. It just doesn't work. But when you think back to the chess analogy, just like in chess, there are well-defined opens. Open up to get the bishop, own the center of the board with the rook and so on. Or sorry, with the knight and so on. There's well-defined closes, roll up the king using your rooks, but the middle of the game is completely dynamic. So similarly in pen testing, there are well-defined opening moves. There's well-defined finishing moves, but the middle is dynamic, and it's much more about next best action style algorithms. So this was our leap of faith. Said 3.5 years ago, is like, is this even possible? And in that time, we've run 26,000 pen tests, all against production systems, no humans involved, IT admin point clicking and digitally shooting to hack themselves. When we first did it, it took, I think, 20 minutes to get a domain compromise. Still super fast.
Right.
Last year, the fastest time was 7 minutes and 19 seconds. This year, so far, it's been 4 minutes and 12 seconds. And
so there's improvement.
But the thing is, that's excluding all the single shot.
Gotcha.
Like, honestly, anyone can exploit it, like a zero logon server and or probably get in there. These are legitimately chaining, 3 or more issues across 3 or more machines, none of which are CVEs. So think of credential stuff, compromise, misconfig.
We used to just
server.
call them techniques. I mean, people would want to know, what are your tools?
Yeah.
Exploits is what we used to call them. And
Yeah.
most of what we do is just look at what's there and kind of weasel our way through.
Exactly. And so, once again, there are aspects of the problem that are actually better solved by algorithms, especially in large environments.
Right.
But there is absolutely, I do not see a world where humans are not involved in the high-end stuff. What I do see, though, is the human element is going to require significant expertise. So, it's going to be even harder to find the really high-skilled humans because it's going to take even more expertise to differentiate yourself.
So you have something, you're selling it. It's a service. It's a product. It's
a SaaS company,
Okay.
SaaS service, so annual subscription based on the size of your environment. You can run as many pen tests as you want. Our customers shift from 1 or 2 pen tests a year to 40 or 50 pen tests a month. Every time they do a major
Are
change.
they the human element, or do you have human elements available?
So there's no human elements. They are literally pointing, clicking, and shooting.
Okay.
And then they are looking at the results, and within the results, it's click here if you want to open a ticket or drive an action or take some sort of remediation step.
Okay. So my day job is PCI. I'm a QSA, and one of the PCI requirements is for a pen test, but one of the sub-requirements is make sure it's performed by a qualified person.
Yeah.
Well, and ironically, and I think they've fixed it in version 4 that's coming out, you only have to vet the qualifications if it's an internal person. There's nothing about who did you hire as a third party to do it. Maybe that's your out. But given that somebody is pushing the button, pointing and clicking internally, how do you answer the question of qualification?
Yeah, so there's a couple of parts. One is for PCI and PCI DSS. A large part of our go-to-market is through our channel partners. That one, there's no way around a qualified human. I'm actually, I was a CIO at a large bank, super annoyed that it isn't explicitly like the qualifications that are required, because you got a whole lot of riffraff out there, that really do mediocre vuln scans and a little bit of Nmap, which agitated me as a customer.
Nessus with a cover page.
Right.
Come on now.
So let's break up the trigger for running a pen test. In that case, for PCI DSS, because it requires a human, you should have a human go off and actually be involved. And we'll actually offer that specifically for PCI DSS. But for SOC 2, DORA, CMMC, and so on, that's not the requirement.
Okay.
It doesn't actually say that. The other part too, though, is most of our customers, while they're answering compliance questions, run us to proactively secure their environment, improve their security posture to their board and their leadership. So PCI DSS is not the compelling driver to run pen tests. It is a step along the way. The compelling driver is truly proactively reducing your exploitable attack surface.
Great. Well, and ironically, in PCI, the design of the pen test is to demonstrate how well all your security program is working. It's just not ever done that way because somebody forgot that part of the message. Man, we could be talking about pen testing for hours, and we should, usually, and particularly at a bar with brown liquor.
Yeah, absolutely.
But unfortunately, our time is winding down here. But it's been great meeting you. Definitely want to keep talking. We haven't even talked about the special operations connection we have. But that's going to wrap us up for this session. If you want to learn more about Horizon 3, go to securityweekly.com/Horizon3.ai BH. Thanks a lot. Thanks,
All right.
Snehal.
Thank you.